Welcome to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio, the weekly radio news magazine that we put together here at the Virginia Institute for Public Policy. You can find us online at virginiainstitute.org, and we have archives of all of our previous programs on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com and look for Freedom and Prosperity Radio. Our first guest this week is fresh from the hearings, where she's got some very interesting views on bringing all the tech giants up to Congress to testify over antitrust, which I thought was an unusual thing to charge them with, as we're really seemingly more concerned with their behavior as publishers. Ashkhen Kazaryan is from the Federalist Society. You see her on Fox News. Thanks for joining us this week on Freedom and Prosperity Radio. How are you doing? Was there a reasonable case to be made about these tech giants in Congress regarding antitrust violations?
First of all, thank you for having me. And second, to answer your question, none of us would know because what we saw was political theater. There are active investigations at DOJ and FTC that Representative Cicilline doesn't want to let play out. He wants to, drag four CEOs into virtually drag them into Congress, and not even listen to their answers. Like, it was everyone just saying what they needed to say for sound bites, and I find that style of congressional hearings very disappointing and unhelpful and a waste of taxpayer money.
Well, as it was back-to-back days of it, I thought even Attorney General Barr, felt the same thing. It's like, is there a question in here anywhere, or is it just, look, Congressperson so-and-so got tough on the big tech giants, and it depends on your ideology, whatever it may be. But it's been my contention for some time, though, Ash, that what really is at issue, especially with Google, mainly their YouTube division, Facebook, and even to a great degree Twitter, Instagram, that they have become publishers. We saw the issue with the Highwire Facebook and YouTube TV show getting deplatformed by YouTube the other day, that they are exercising editorial functions. So therefore, they are admitting to me that they are just like a traditional publisher, and therefore they should be held to the same responsibilities as, say, the Washington Post that had to settle a deal with the Sandman kid from Covington.
I'm glad you brought up the publisher angle, because as a lawyer, for me, it's so frustrating that there's just, I even know who started this, Senator Cruz started this. And he also is a lawyer, so I know what he was doing. That dichotomy doesn't truly exist right now. Being a publisher, quote unquote, doesn't mean anything for platforms. Platforms, under current law, they have, and this law is what created the Internet as we know it, and it also gave the United States the world domination in technology as we know it. Section 230, right. It allowed publishers, you see? I'm doing that myself. It allowed platforms to be able to moderate content how they found fit, to be able to do that at scale. If you think about it, there are millions of posts going up every day. An analogy I like to use is, think about a bookstore. We can't hold a bookstore liable for every word that's said in every book in it. And I understand that there are a lot of concerns and feelings of different political sides when it comes to moderation. And I think because a lot of folks unfortunately exist in the bubbles and don't hear the other side out, actually both sides are complaining about the moderation. Just Wednesday during the hearing, both Democrats and Republicans were saying the same thing, like, why did you take this content down? Why did you keep this content up? And I think Zuckerberg did something that, they should have been saying for all along, like, guys, listen, you're both complaining. I'm just trying to figure this out. Content moderation is complicated.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's, your scale model is something that, is something that needs to be considered in this. It's not like you're sitting there at the office of Time magazine with a room full of reporters saying which one's story is ready to go into the paper or even the Washington Post or something of that nature, where it's so much of it. But does that also leave it vulnerable to things like the Russian bot farms in St. Petersburg that are continuing to, DOJ reports both from the Obama administration and the Trump administration that these bot farms set people against one another. We have reports that both sides of the Charlottesville riots were, targeted by the St. Petersburg bot farm. Does that kind of moderation and maybe the scale of Facebook and Twitter is more than, say, the message boards of the early 2000s?
So here's what I think the next step of that logical kind of analysis, because I'm glad you brought that up. Section 230, right, the law that says that platforms are not liable for what third parties say on the platform, allows them to take things down. So if let's say, a lot of conservatives I've heard say, let's apply the First Amendment or the First Amendment values, which I don't even know what that means, because that just means whatever we like about the First Amendment and parts that we don't like about the First Amendment. To the platform moderation, right, that would mean that they can take it down, right? The First Amendment is a free speech law that is the strongest in the world. And I actually was born and I grew up in Russia, and let me tell you, I know what it's like to not have a right to speak, basically, and have your position suppressed.
That's right. I had forgotten that part of your bio. I apologize. I just know our time is short, so I want to make sure I get everything in, because there's a lot of confusion about this. Their testimony at the hearings, when they got to do any of it, Ash, it was pointing out to a lot of numbers. They were throwing numbers out that were supposed to show how little of the market they actually dominate. But when Google first even started as a search engine, said we can promote your results if you pay us a little extra, as far back as 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. So obviously, if they can promote it, they can also denigrate it. Is the transparency really the issue with these online and digital giants?
I have no problem asking them for more transparency. At the same time, there are two things to consider. Number one is the algorithms and how some of those algorithms are proprietary, and we shouldn't be in a capitalistic country asking a company to disclose their trade secret the same way we shouldn't ask Coca-Cola to tell us how they make Coca-Cola. And number two is that you said it very right. The markets that they actually are in are very different, and they don't actually have as big of a chunk of those markets. When it comes to ads and how and what Google does, when they promote certain content and they don't promote other content, I ask everyone, I know some are frustrated, but I ask everyone to think about the Masterpiece Bake Shop or Hobby Lobby. This is along the lines of every single First Amendment Supreme Court precedent in the last few decades. Google is a private company, and no matter what some people say that it's a public forum, this Supreme Court, with majority conservatives, would find it not to be. So it's a private company, and they do have a right to make decisions. However, I think it's okay for us as a society to ask for more transparency.
Well, and the discussion is certainly something an educated consumer can hear us talking and say, well, maybe I want to use something different than that, DuckDuckGo or something along those lines. I've brought this up just as an example. I'm old enough to remember when the Gores and Congress was, quote, being extolled to do something, in air quotes with exclamation points, about Napster. And then Sony went out and, quote, did it along with some help from Apple. And Napster is, I guess, still trying to reinvent itself from it. So is there a danger in this, before we run out of time, to be overzealous that the government needs to do something and we should let the marketplace do what it needs to?
Absolutely, because overregulation is going to lead to Chinese tech companies being world dominators. We already are seeing TikTok coming in, and TikTok has a lot of problematic practices, including suppressing Hong Kong protesters and any information about re-education camps in China. And while they claim they're not doing that, that's what authoritarian countries do. So I am very worried that the American values and the free speech values that are so strong and that are being spread throughout the world are going to get trampled by Chinese companies if we keep dominating, we keep overregulating our tech companies, where China is trying to dominate the world.
Well, I appreciate it, Ash. Thank you so much. Now I can put my name up there with the guys at Fox that you help out with this information all the time. But I do appreciate your time this morning visiting us from the Federalist Society. You have a great weekend.
Thank you for having me.